Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. Firstly, I want to place on the record my enormous thanks to everyone in the emergency services, especially the volunteers who've worked so hard to help people in my community over recent weeks with flooding and storm events. And whilst Maitland has not had the catastrophic flood events that we've seen in the northern rivers or other parts of the state, it has been flooding that has provided significant impacts to those people whose houses have been directly affected. And the concerning thing for me, Mr Temporary Speaker, is that it appears that the federal government has been letting this go and is prepared to ignore it and the impact on those individuals. So I have people in my electorate who have been writing to me, Mr Speaker, and if we just have a look... Excuse me, Mr Speaker, could you please call to order? It's really an important issue here for my community.
Order.
I have got all of these representations that I have been making to the Minister for Emergency Services and Resilience and now Flood Recovery and the Premier and the Minister for Agriculture about all these community people in my electorate who have had terrible, terrible situations. Each one of these pieces of paper are representing people who have had things like sewerage coming through their houses, who have been isolated in properties and relying on flood boats and surf life-saving rescue to get to work, to get to medical appointments, to get to education, who haven't been able to earn an income, who've had holes in their roof, who've had mould all through their walls, who've had substantial damage to their property. There's a lot of farmers there. I raised that with the Minister for Agriculture, and he said, well, there's no natural disaster declaration, but there was more than a massive amount of damage, in fact, on the levee bank at Maitland, which is a state government asset. It's under soil conservation. Now, the trigger for a natural disaster event is $240,000 of damage to state-owned assets, and to be as part of an LGA that is impacted by that. That was what I was trying to make the point to the Minister, and I noticed he's in the chamber right now. But the idea was, it's not a declaration. Well, perhaps the Minister could have actually pushed that to be there. Now, I do give credit to the Minister for Emergency Services and Resilience that after 3 letters, 3 representations calling for a natural disaster declaration, where I pointed out that the flood plan for Maitland that we're operating under is from 2013. They're supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. It's relying on that, within that plan, on data from 2003 from Maitland City Council. Now, they've updated their plan, but that's not even in the state plan. So communities like Gilliston Heights, which in 2015, some 2,000 people were isolated for 8 days. If you go back to 2003, there was only probably 150 people that lived in that area. So they are working on out-of-date information. And if everybody had forgotten that, I'd say, well, that's a really bad thing, but we all forgot it. But I didn't forget it. I wrote to the former Minister for Emergency Services in August 2020 saying to him, that flood plan is out of date. You've now had 6 years or 7 years since it should have been reviewed to get it done. You haven't done that. We've had a major flood event, and now we're sitting on this old... And it's not the council plan, thank you, Mr Oatley. It's actually not the council plan. It's actually the state government, because council's plan is pretty up to date, much more so than the state government. But what the problem is, this creates problems from our community. We had a flood event in November. This government did nothing. I begged for them to make that a declaration because of the damage to the levee banks, to our farmers. We've had thousands of dollars of loss from that. Nothing was done. They were completely ignored. And then March, I've had to beg and beg and beg for my community. And right now, I have been advised that there is a federal declaration about to come out about individual assistance to people, to those people who are living with sewage having flowed through their home, with their carpets impacted, their electrical white goods blown up, all that sort of thing. There's money there on the table that the federal government's got, but they want to make an announcement. Well, I tell you what, they just need to do it. They need to get the money out the door. And for the Deputy Premier, Acting Premier, to get in here today at question time and criticise Labor for asking for accountability when our community are hurting and they are very distressed, We need to know that this money is getting out the door. We need those people. They have been through so much. Our state, everyone in our state has been through so much over the last few years. And when help is promised in a media release, when help is promised by the government and it's not delivered, it is a massive betrayal and they should be ashamed of themselves. But more important, just get the money out the door to the people who need it. Please.
I'm with you.